Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to the 18 March 2016 edition of Portsmouth This Week, Voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our special guests today are State Senator John Pagiarini from District 11, which includes Portsmouth, Tiverton, and Bristol. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Doug.
And State Rep Dan Reilly, District 72, represents Middletown and Portsmouth. So welcome to you too, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
I think it's the first time we've had you guys on the program.
Yes.
Yeah, good. There's so many things going on up there at the State House that I don't know where to begin, but I thought what I'd try to do is just mention a couple of topics and just see what you guys' views are on these things, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
The first one, let's talk about the cell phone bill, the one about making using cell phones in your car illegal. How do you guys feel about that?
I voted against it. I was one of 2 votes in the Senate to vote against it. Conceptually, it's a good idea, but logistically, I had problems with the bill for 2 reasons. Number one, the bill states that you can activate and deactivate a telephone call. So you can hold the phone in your hand and activate a call. To me, that means you can scroll through your contacts, look up Doug's telephone name in the contacts, press the button, now you've activated a call.
Yeah.
Well, that defeats the purpose, because how long do you have to go through your contacts list? But secondly, and more importantly, is that there's no continuity between the 3 cell phone bills. If you're under 18, you can't hold a cell phone. I believe it's a $150 fine, and it goes progressively higher. If you get caught texting while driving, it's, I believe, a $100 fine and a loss of driver's license, and it goes progressively longer. And then this cell phone bill is a $100 fine, but if you prove you buy a Bluetooth or you have hands-free in your car but weren't using it, they waive the fee. So if you were texting, you could say I was on my phone because it's a lesser penalty.
Yeah.
I want the same penalty for all 3. So that's why I voted no.
Yeah, it would be nice if they combined everything into one thing that made sense, I guess. Mm-hmm. How about you, Dan? What do you think about that?
So the Senate passed the bill, as Senator Pagiarini said, and the House, I believe the Judiciary Committee either has had or will be having a hearing on the bill, and it hasn't been scheduled for a floor vote. So I'm not as intimately familiar with the individual provisions. It's problems like those that John pointed out that really can make really good bills on their face bad bills to vote for. So I'm going to, keep an eye open. The same thing happened with the driving while texting bill. I think most people agree that that was a good move, but when you look at how it was drafted and how people can go to traffic tribunal and contest different cases, I think we made it even more confusing in some cases. So we, on what may seem simple on its face, we do have to be careful with.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be very complex in trying to actually prosecute these things. I have to admit that I have occasionally looked at my contact list.
Right.
I have Bluetooth, but it's still you're not driving 100%. Right? So the idea is good. It's just hard putting it into the right words, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it'll work going forward. Another bill I thought was interesting, and I'm not sure where these are. Okay, I just have seen them at various times in the newspapers. Is the bill about Newport Bridge toll scofflaws, toll violators. And I guess what they want is RITBA wants to be able to go to the DMV, so when people try to renew their license or their registration, it'll be held up. Is that a good way to do this, or apparently they have a lot of real violators.
This is one of those bills that when they came to us and proposed it, I asked them, this isn't the law right now. It's the law in most states that have tolls on bridges or highways. It's pretty straightforward. The devil's always in the details. You want to make sure that, particularly with easy pass violators, that if you have a transponder and it didn't, malfunction, you're not going to have your license suspended or your registration suspended. So you want to make sure there's wiggle room there. I mean, there is some gray area, particularly with these violations. All in all, I don't see a reason to oppose the concept, though.
Conceptually, it's probably not bad, but as Rep. Reilly just said, it's the details. Number one, we have a DMV that is so far behind on their computer system. Yeah. We've got a court system that's billing people from 25 years ago, so they don't have their act together, but we're going to put new penalties on people. I think until those 2 administrative agencies get their act together, we shouldn't. But what troubles me more about that toll evader is that it is the red flag for the Dormant Commerce Clause argument on the truck toll bill, because it's a $500 penalty on the Newport Bridge, but a $3,000 penalty on the legislation that was passed last month. And I think that's going to be used against the state, ultimately, to unravel the truck toll bill.
Yeah, good points, all of them. Yeah, I can understand the need, but I think they had you had to have a certain number of violations. It wasn't, I drove through there once with a trailer. I didn't realize that I was actually, and then I got the bill and paid it. But I think it was like 30 or something. You have to, a significant amount. You had to be doing this regularly, I think. But like you say, another good idea, good concept, tough to put into law. Another one, another kind of good idea in a way, I guess, except it kind of makes us even more of a nanny state, is the, I don't know, I call it the Home Alone bill. The one about you can't leave 7-year-olds in a car, you can't leave 10-year-olds at home by themselves. And I guess there were penalties associated with that.
Well, right now, there is it's Rhode Island General Law 3122, 22.1, I believe.
I'm impressed.
Well,
I'm impressed.
I looked this stuff
Making
up.
all of that up.
No, it's actually, and what it is that if you leave a child under age 7 unattended in a motor vehicle, there can be no monetary fine and a verbal warning to the operator of the vehicle. However, the Senate passed a bill a week or so ago that if you leave your pet in the vehicle, it's mandatory 72 hours in an animal hospital. You pay for all the costs. If they want to do a $3,000 MRI, you got to pay for that. And then you get criminally arraigned in district court with a minimum $1,000 fine and possible seizure and non-return of your pet. But yet we have no penalties for the 7-year-olds in the car.
Okay, now, did they actually pass that?
It passed the Senate.
The Senate.
I voted against it.
Okay.
And the people on the Senate floor, when I raised my issue, said, well, there's child endangerment laws, etc. But we passed the pet bill first.
And we have animal cruelty laws on the books, which have been used to prosecute those people in the
Yeah.
past. But this was a response to a specific
Yeah.
incident, and classic case of people going,
Knee-jerk reaction.
knee-jerk reaction, well beyond the scope of what they should have done, in my opinion.
I mean, the ideas are good, but again,
What if it's a gorgeous fall day and the
and I
window's
kind of feel
down
like
half
it's
the
like,
way?
come on, this is something parents should know anyway.
Right.
Granted, somebody's going to violate that, but I don't know. I'm kind of a mixed emotions on that thing myself, but I'll keep an eye on it. I'm very against animal cruelty, and I think these guys should get the book thrown at them, but it's got to be done right.
None of us want to see a child or a pet
Yeah.
left in a vehicle, but my argument was, why are we changing a $1,000 fine on the pets to now include all these medical costs and a criminal arraignment when the motor vehicle statute states children can be left in the car with only a verbal warning? I was troubled by that as a legislator and a parent.
Well, but aren't they trying to change that? Isn't that
Well,
what
they are, but it's been held in committee, and unless there's public support for it, I don't think it's going to come out of committee.
Okay, so these things come out, and then you kind of gauge what the public thinks. Is that kind of how it works? A little publicity
I
comes
think
out?
it helps. I don't. Sometimes, as the tolls showed, the General Assembly can be deaf to what the public wants.
And hopefully through the committee process, you can really elicit testimony from people and interest groups who have a stake or have opinions about it. But then, maybe it's the end of session and rules have been suspended and bills originate, go to committee, and get passed on the floor all within one night.
I think it's like sausage. You don't want to know how it's made, I guess.
I don't know how it's made. Really, that's the biggest problem.
Okay, so we'll see what happens to that stuff. What about Roadworks Rhode Island? I think Dan, you question the legality of Roadworks Rhode Island. How do you guys feel about that? And what is the problem with Roadworks Rhode Island?
Well, I know we both question the legality and just about everything else related to the bill.
In a nutshell.
And, the 45-minute answer is that, from a legal standpoint, there are a lot of problems with the bill, but from a legal standpoint, and John can definitely offer detail into this, but there's some major problems, some real red flags with this bill that could subject the state to a lot of legal costs, and actually lose a really expensive, protracted legal fight. At the end of the day, we've made an arbitrary distinction between Class 8 commercial vehicles and all commercial vehicles below that. Even though commercial vehicle operators will tell you, when you break down to it, and we won't get into detail here, but certain trucks below Class 8, as a matter of axle weight, actually do more damage to a bridge than a fully loaded tractor trailer because they're displacing it over a much larger vehicle. When they explain it to you, it makes a lot of sense, even if you know nothing about trucks. The bottom line is, by doing that, all we were trying to do, not us because we voted against it, but all the legislature and the governor was trying to do was protect in-state businesses. So your landscaping companies and construction companies wouldn't be affected by the bill. But in doing so, we are, hitting out-of-state truckers, and protecting in-state interests at the expense of out-of-state truckers, and that is unconstitutional. And so a federal judge could very easily either halt roadworks completely after we've spent $65 million on gantries, or a federal judge could say, listen, you know what, you have to tax all commercial vehicles in order to make this scheme constitutional, in which case the legislature and the governor have just told possibly all vehicles, certainly all commercial vehicles.
Okay, now where is this? What's the status of that then? I thought it was kind of going forward already.
It's a law.
Yeah. So
It's been signed
it's
by
already
the
been
governor.
decided
Yeah.
upon.
It's
but-
been signed by the governor. Rep.
Now-
Reilly's 100%
and
correct.
now we watch for the fallout, I guess, if there will be any.
Right.
From,
The question becomes whether or not the Truckers Association can file a lawsuit before the gantries go up, or they have to wait the projected 3 years before their injury occurs.
And by the way, the state loses either way, because if a judge, and it wouldn't be for nefarious reasons, if he rules that or the judge rules that the truckers don't have standing, that's legitimate. But that means the state has to go ahead and spend $65–70 million before their very legitimate case can go before a judge, and then the judge says, oh yeah, I would have ruled against that before, but I couldn't. So
Yeah.
it's a bad deal for the state no matter what.
okay, by the way, I should mention to our audience that these two guys are lawyers. That's why it sounds so, it sounds good. Sounds very...
Plus, we have right on our side.
Yeah,
so-
I wish more
Right,
lawyers had
right.
looked at the bill before they passed it.
And yet the governor paid $450,000 to a law firm in Washington, D.C. to draft
Yeah,
the
I
bill.
think that was one of your issues.
They won't show us the legal opinion.
Yeah.
They claim it's protected, even though the legal opinion was written for a bill that they wrote that we were supposed to pass.
Yeah, I agree. That does not seem right at all.
Nope.
Dan, I know you also have been putting in for the need for an inspector general for the state of Rhode Island. That would be an additional job, and would it be related to the Attorney General, or how do you see that working out?
It wouldn't be related to the Attorney General, but it wouldn't necessarily be an additional job. In statute, yes, it would be a position created in the law, but there's no requirement that we have to go out and hire a new person.
Yeah.
We spend millions of dollars a year in auditors in different divisions of state government, and when you look at what their job is, they do a lot of things an Inspector General would do. I certainly envision this office as combining all of those existing positions into one position, one office that's given autonomy, so that they don't report to a department director that they're supposed to be auditing. They're given independence and can freely police state government. Their relationship with the Attorney General would be if they uncover criminal wrongdoing,
then
they
turn
can
it
forward
over
it.
to her.
But their job, they're not law enforcement officers. Their job isn't to pursue criminal investigations. They certainly will uncover those types of things and then give it to the right people. Their job is to say, how are we spending our money? Let's look at contracts. Are we getting what we're paying for? Is there waste? Is there fraud? This has been used incredibly successfully at the federal level. And in Massachusetts, they created their position in the 80s, and every year their Inspector General pays for itself in the savings and recommendations it uncovers.
So what do you think, John? What do you think the chances are of this?
Well, I think that...
It makes sense to me.
I think that Rep. Reilly was ahead of his time, and that the governor has, how shall we say, taken credit for what he's done in her budget articles this year. One of the budget articles does exactly what Rep. Reilly's requesting, which is to pull the auditors out of individual departments and put them into a central department under the auspices of one person, not calling that person the Inspector General. So I think we're getting there. If assuming the budget passes with this article intact, and I don't know if, I know our finance committee's already heard it, I don't know if it's come to yours yet.
We've heard that article.
But
Okay, so
it
got-
really,
got a good shot.
one of the failings of the system is the fact that we have an absentee attorney general. You know, if the attorney general's office was prosecuting some of these things, there'd be less of the need for the type of legislation that's moving forward now.
Yeah. You know, this segues neatly into the next general question, which is about ethics reform.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are on that, and where do you think we should go?
I think ethics reform will happen this session. What the debate is that Article 3, Section 8 of the Rhode Island Constitution has what's known as the speech and debate clause. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's the Ethics Commission section. The speech and debate is Article 6. And what's going on is that you're trying to, there's various bills that are out there, and like Senator Sheehan's bill puts in a jury trial. Well, the Supreme Court has said that's not permissible. So that bill's got some problems. And then Senator O'Neill's bill on this side says eliminate the speech and debate clause and make everybody 100% susceptible to the Ethics Commission. And the only people who can pass that are the people who are going to become subject to it. So that one's not moving. So there's going to be a middle of the road bill that should come out of this.
Yeah, it's got to be it's got to be tough asking people to sign something regulating them.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, from just a general, Rhode Island resident perspective, I think most people think something is needed. We need something here.
It's a bad optic not to have anything.
Well, not just as a bad publicity and we look bad, but I think there's a sense that we're almost a joke in Rhode Island, and we shouldn't be. I think there should be transparency. There should be openness somehow.
And I take a little bit of issue with the joke comment because the Rhode Island Supreme Court ruled that speech and debate is not under the control of the Ethics Commission. The question becomes, what is the willingness to yield some of that back to the Ethics Commission? And it's that middle of the road ethics bill that's going to pass.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean,
And everybody's
I look
gonna
forward to seeing something.
And everybody's got to understand that they're not going to get what they want.
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
going to
that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
so.
Yeah. So, well, good luck on that. I think it's important that we show some progress in that area. That's all. And that leads me into another one I like: the legalizing marijuana issue. That's coming up. I guess the governor has said it probably should go to a state referendum, which kind of makes sense to me because it's a big decision to make. What do you guys think?
You want to take that one first?
Oh, thank you. Well, I support a referendum on it. I think I agree with the governor on this. I agree with, you're hearing more rumblings from legislators that at least a non-binding referendum in November is the preferable option. And I don't disagree with that. It is a complicated issue. Again, as I keep telling people, no matter what we do, I know attitudes throughout the country may be changing. It's still a Schedule I controlled substance from the federal government. We may have we will be having a new administration come in next year. They may be more liberal in their approach. They may be more conservative in their approach. And the Justice Department's given great leeway to their prosecutors in the field in making policy determinations as to whether or not they want to go after. So in Colorado, they've had success in really legalizing it. In other states, federal prosecutors have said, we're still going to take you to court if you're distributing or growing drugs that are illegal under federal law. So what are we expect? I hate to say call your congressman when someone asks me about my position on a state issue, but you really should call your congressman on this one.
And my thought is, no, it shouldn't be on the referendum, and no, we shouldn't legalize it. If you sit down and talk to the Portsmouth drug prevention folks, there's a problem in the town, starting at the middle school.
There's a problem in every town.
And we're just going to make it more pervasive. I think that doing this for revenue purposes is bad policy.
Yeah, I think revenue there are other reasons for doing this that people will tell you. I look at this as kind of interesting because our biggest problem is alcohol, to be honest. And if you look back during Prohibition, the same arguments came up for alcohol. and they're real. But anyway, it's a tough issue, but I do think it's one probably that the
It's going to come up.
state population should have a vote on, you know.
And well, from a policy perspective, I support initiative and referendum generally. So whenever someone comes up to me and says, "Should you support? Would you support a ballot item?" I've supported the concept of putting things on the ballot for things I haven't supported in the
Okay.
past, just because I think that isn't a bad thing to
Okay,
do.
now,
in general.
but you said you're against legalizing marijuana. What is your take on that?
I have very strong concerns about legalizing it. Personally, it's not something that I've never tried marijuana. I'm not saying that to, be on my high horse. It's just never been in, my wheelhouse. But I've heard, as Senator Pagiarini said, for my district, Portsmouth and Middletown have two very strong prevention coalitions. And I've heard from them, and I've heard from law enforcement and others, but it's the prevention coalitions really stand out because you have parents from across the ideological spectrum. On other issues, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But on this issue, they're very consistent, and they're a force. And so I'm certainly very cognizant of their opinions on it.
And if I could take a 10-second commercial for the Portsmouth Drug Prevention Coalition, their annual budget is $65,000 for the yeoman's work they do.
Yeah.
If anybody
Ray Davis and those
Ray
folks.
Davis, write a check and contribute to the Portsmouth
Yeah.
Drug Prevention
I was
Coalition.
briefly on their committee. I was their media expert or something until they figured out that I didn't really know much about media. But anyway, it was very interesting seeing the dedication of these folks and what they're trying to do.
I attended their last meeting, and it's fascinating what they do.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're in the schools and,
Well, they're actually, right now, they've applied for a federal grant that would be worth
Yeah,
$500,000.
absolutely.
Yeah, $500,000.
they've applied every year for the last 3 or 4 years. But
That close last
I know,
year.
I know.
2 points.
the thing is, they're going to need that, I think,
Yeah.
going forward. Okay, enough about that. What about another issue that's kind of a big one is driver's license for illegal immigrants. And what's interesting is that the federal laws, here's another bunch of federal laws that aren't really being enforced. But it seems to me the problem is in Congress. They've got to deal with this thing somehow. And probably the same thing with marijuana eventually. They've got to, they can't keep pushing it down the road, my view. What do you guys think?
Easy answer, no. And the Rhode Island State Police Superintendent should resign.
Okay.
That letter to the House was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess their take is for safety reasons we need this.
No. You don't need insurance to have a driver's license. And that was his whole premise of his letter. He tarnished the state police by writing that letter.
And I disagree with granting driver's licenses to illegal aliens. Again, yes, in a perfect world, the federal government would deal with this problem.
Yeah.
I think state law enforcement should actually take a different track. We should be a better partner with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I don't think then Governor Chafee's executive order is still in effect in terms of their ability to cooperate with federal law enforcement on immigration, but that should be the track they take, not this one.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Those are 2 good views. I appreciate your views on these things. I want to talk a little bit about Portsmouth here and just economic development in general in the East Bay, but specifically in our town. We used to be a rural community. Now we're kind of a bedroom community, but we'd like to entice some businesses to come into town. What are you guys doing up at the State House to help us do that? I mean, can you guys help us with that?
I think we can make a lot of really good changes for the town, starting first and foremost with broad-based tax reform for the whole state. I think if we made Rhode Island in general a place where people wanted to come and live, they would flock to a place like Portsmouth. It's a great town. For all the reasons we're here, I think
It's a great place to
more
live,
people.
for sure.
The fundamentals are still there, but we need to make it cheaper to be here. We can't make it a better deal, particularly for military retirees, public sector retirees, to just go to Westport. They don't have to leave their work. They don't have to leave their families. They can just go to Westport. As long as the laws allow them to do that and make it easier for them to go there because they save money, we're not going to grow as a community. We're not going to entice people here.
This is a higher level than just the town of Portsmouth. It's the decisions that the State Senate and the House of Reps make regarding Providence, because a lot of Portsmouth money is going to Providence.
Absolutely.
So we need to stop some of the hemorrhaging that Providence is causing. But right now there's a bill on both sides for the local tax incentives for Portsmouth. I don't support it. And I know that might be controversial, but here's my problem. The town council sent a resolution to us
Talking about
asking,
the enterprise zone
They
tax
sent-
exemptions?
right, and when you read the state statute, the power emanates from the people. I'll go with Rep. Reilly on that one and say that should be a referendum question to the voters of Portsmouth, whether or not they want to authorize a tax stabilization.
Yeah.
And then the council, I'd be happy to support it next year based on that vote, but
Well,
not
I
this year.
don't know if, I've seen a presentation that shows that it's been a net gain monetarily for Portsmouth over the years.
The problem is, on the scale, it might be a net gain for Portsmouth, but when you throw Providence on the same statutes, it's costing Portsmouth money. So we need to address the entire tax stabilization system in the state of Rhode Island before we start doing anything.
Yeah.
And my perspective on that is just a little different. I think that, what John is saying it's on point with regards to every time they subsidize a project in Providence, it negatively affects Portsmouth residents
Absolutely.
because we subsidize the city as a whole. My tack on that is we need to take greater oversight as to the spending in the city of Providence, their budget, and how they suck in all of that aid every year and what they do with it.
Yeah.
That may be greater state oversight. They're on the brink of bankruptcy. There should be greater state oversight, maybe a fiscal control board or something like that, because every community in the state is subsidizing them.
Yeah. That's the way it appears to us too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys are
And it's true.
thinking in the same way. We're getting down to just about a little over a minute left. And I got a billion questions for you, but one big one I think is DOT and the TIP, the Traffic Improvement Program, whatever it is. And recently, they've been looking at doing this town center thing with the roundabouts, et cetera, et cetera. A big job. They also need to repave some of our roads that they own. And they just essentially came down and said, look, we got a lot of other problems elsewhere. We're going to have to push you guys off. What can you guys do about that?
Real quick, I've sat down with DOT. Middle Road and East Main Road heading towards the Middletown Town Line will be going out to bid in the fall for repaving
Super.
next in 17. And the town council needs to get involved in what's going on the town center project because the state will not pay the $15.2 million.
Yeah.
That's proposed.
And we've budgeted money through the years and paid for a lot of the design work on that, so I expect DOT to pick up the slack on that project.
Okay, good. We're out of time, gentlemen. I thank you so much for coming aboard, and I hope you guys will come back in a few months or whatever. It's been a real education. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a closing note. Last week, the Portsmouth Historical Society sponsored a public viewing of the 1638 Portsmouth Compact at Town Hall. This was followed by a public lecture by Jim Garman at the Portsmouth Library on the founding of Portsmouth. Jim Garman is our town historian. He gave the lecture. It was sold out at the library. They had to turn people away, so Jim's doing another one of those at the library again from 6:30 to 7:30 next Thursday, which is the 24th of March. And for those people who couldn't get seats for the first one, it's really an excellent lecture, and I think you'd enjoy it. But you have to contact the Portsmouth Free Public Library at 683-9457 to reserve your seat. In a related note, the Portsmouth Historical Society has recently upgraded its website, so if you want to know what's going on in town, lectures, etc., things to do with Portsmouth's history, just go to www.portsmouthhistorical.org. On that site, you'll find a lot of information about upcoming events, activities, and other things, including membership. Thanks very much. Doug Smith signing off. We'll see you next time.